Thank you for joining us today. Alice asked us to put a little summary together on SPLOST for y'all, and then really give you an opportunity to ask some additional questions that maybe we haven't asked at the meetings. I know I'm not always there. I always have a representative, but if there's anything that you want to ask of me or from my team, we're happy to accommodate that. Before we get started, I'm going to ask, is there any initial questions before we run through about a 12-slide PowerPoint deck and let you all jump in as you see fit? Good? Okay. All right. Let me try to share my screen and we'll get going. So first of all, we're going to talk about what a SPLOST is. And I know you're all very familiar with this, but just it's a good refresher and kind of how it came to be in Cobb County. Okay, so we know it's a 1% sales tax that's used to fund county capital outlay projects and participating municipal government. So obviously our 6 cities would be included in that. It was enacted in 1985 at the request of ACCG, and then I gave you the code section that it was under. So just to kind of give you an idea, Cobb County was one of the driving forces behind this legislation. So we have been using SPLOST for quite a long time, and I'm going to give you some history and some numbers to go with that as well. So the reason we went about this process is really that this is a way for Cobb County citizens to split the cost of these large capital projects with people who visit the county. Now, there's been a lot of argument over the years to say, you know, what is that split? Is it 80-20? Is it 70-30? It's really hard to really pin that down, but we do know for a fact that not all of the sales tax is paid by Cobb County residents. It is paid for by citizens that from outside the county that visit, that use our infrastructure. So that was kind of the basis of this, is to say, you know, can we really capture the people that use the infrastructure and help them pay to repair and improve that infrastructure? So that's kind of how this was put together. And as you know, that this is always brought via referendum, and it is approved by the Board of Commissioners first, and then it goes to the Cobb County voters for their approval. And with that, we always identify a list of voter-approved projects. So we always spell out what those are. I know you're all very familiar with those as you go through the departmental updates and you hear from the cities. And we have some that are large kind of catch-all projects where we say intersection improvements, resurfacing, and things of that nature that don't go and identify the individual roads because they have to have some flexibility to them. Okay, so kind of the flow of funds. This is a little unique. So we're going to start with it's a very circular motion as we go through this. So obviously the sales tax monies are remitted on a monthly basis to the county from the state, and then we remit the city shares to them within a month of us receiving their funds. And then we use, both the city and the county use our funds to hire contractors to perform the capital improvements that's required. And obviously they charge a sales tax, and it goes back to the individual businesses and back to the state. But when we do that, one of the things I wanted to let you know is that although when we do the voter-approved projects, we have a set budget. For example, for the 2022 SPLOST, we know it's $750 million, and they say roughly that's $125 million a year. The challenge with that is obviously we don't know exactly what we're going to collect, and $125 million per year is extremely low, very conservative. So when the monies come in higher, the cities share in that within that same month. So we don't wait till the end to give the cities their piece of that pie. But the same is to be said if it ever comes in short. So because it's based on percentage of collection, we always share that, either the good or bad, with the cities within the same month that it's collected, so that we all have the ability to make adjustments timely, and we don't wait until the very end to do that. Okay, and the city's allocations are based on populations that's agreed upon at the beginning of each SPLOST. So it's roughly, 74 for the county, and then roughly you're looking at 27 for the cities. It's pretty close, and I'll show you that breakdown here in a minute. Okay, but kind of some history with this. Going back to 1990, we've collected $2.8 billion just in sales tax revenue. And you can see that breakdown, and we know that 2016 SPLOST is ongoing. We'll get our final payment at the end of this month. But I ran these through October to kind of prepare for this meeting to give you an idea of the dollar value that we brought in. But the other part that a lot of people forget is this is just the sales tax piece of it. So when we say 750 million for the 2022 SPLOST, that is just the sales tax piece. Now, what a lot of times you exclude from that, because we have matching funds for state and federal grants, is this number here. So from 1990 to 2021, we brought in an additional $463 million that have gone in to help support these infrastructure projects. So these would be grants that require matching, interest earnings that have been generated on the cash that we've been able to collect through SPLOST, and all been reinvested into these voter-approved projects. So when we talk about that SPLOST list, just keep that in mind, is that a lot of these projects would not move forward or would be far less without the additional federal and state funding grants that we receive. So we do have that matching component, especially heavily in DOT. They're the ones who primarily take advantage of this for the most part. But that's $463 million of additional monies that were able to go to infrastructure improvements from the 1990 SPLOST to the 2016 SPLOST. Okay, and I did talk about this briefly, kind of the breakout. So I wanted to show you on the left here, you'll see the 2016 SPLOST through October, the collections, and then to do the calculations, we take the county-wide projects that are agreed upon between the county and the cities that benefit the entire county. Those come off the top, and then we get that net collection number, and then we do it based on the allocation of the population that's agreed on below. So you can see for 2016, it was 74 versus 26%. And then for 2022, the proposed is pretty close. You're at 73.987 versus 26 and change. So it's pretty close to the same. So we've seen some populations plus up and down, and even within the cities, you've seen them change between who gets a little bit more, who gets a little bit less based on people moving in and out of the area. But overall, it gives you a good indication. But just take a look at the 2016, right, 894 million through October compared to the budget of 750 million for the 2022 SPLOST. And now I know that's been a big topic of conversation about, what happens with the additional revenue above projections, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But any questions on the allocation between the county and the cities thus far? And I'm seeing a few head no's, which is great.
I had a quick question. This is Jackie.
Yeah, everybody, so please chime in. Yes.
Yeah, this is Jackie Bedadapur. I had a question about when you say less countywide projects, what is that?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm going to flip to this slide and it's going to show you real quick. So here's a list of the 2016 countywide projects and the 2022 countywide projects. So I wanted to show you that because that is a big ticket part of the conversation when we get into these agreements of what comes off the top, because these benefit both the county and cities is how these are viewed. So when we take that into consideration, we're treating these as almost a county and a city combined project. So those come off the top first. So whatever the collections are, we take basically the county-wide, flip back real quick. So for example, the 46 million for 2022, we take that and we amortize that over the number of payments that we'll receive over this given life of SPLOST, and we get a monthly value to that. And then we take the collections less the monthly value, and then we do the distribution. Because we say at the end of the day, and we being the county and the cities, that these projects benefit both the county and cities. So here are sorry, go ahead.
So the countywide projects are the county projects are different than the countywide projects, is what you're saying? Like
they are. Now, a lot of times they're all administered by the county as we're the project managers, but yes, those are treated differently. For example, the new animal service facility in the 2022 SPLOST, that is viewed and it is agreed upon from the city's perspective as well, that this would be something that would benefit the entire county, including the cities. So they agreed to say that, okay, we agree that this is a countywide project and it would come off the top before our allocation. So those do have to be specifically agreed upon between the county and cities prior to us moving forward. But a lot of times, to your point though, we do, and I'm trying to see if there's any examples here, but for the most part, we are the project managers and we do treat those as county projects, but we do have to account for those a little bit differently because they do impact the allocation. That make sense? Okay. Good. All right. And this is obviously I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges when we get into a new SPLOST is deciding and agreeing on what are the county projects and how much dollars are going to go here. Because like I said, it impacts how much the cities receive. So getting everybody on board with this is is always a interesting task, but you can see for 2022, the list is a little bit less, the dollar value is a little bit more. So as we kind of go back and forth between these, it's a good conversation. Okay, so kind of just to give you a little bit of an update on the numbers. So during the last 12 months, the SPLOST collections have brought in 181 million. Now we budgeted 125, and I told you again for 2022, they left it at 125 again. So you can see where the excess comes from. But one of the keys that we want to remember is we cannot begin to appropriate or spend this based on, well, it came in great this year, but we still haven't met our obligation of the 750. So when we have those conversations, that is to protect us, because we saw this in the 05 SPLOST, is that we were riding high for a long time. Everything was looking great. And then the recession hit at the end of 05, and we ended up having to scale back on some projects. So that's why we do not begin to spend these additional dollars until after we've hit the mark of what we've originally budgeted. So in the case for 2016, you saw once we received over the 750 million, there was a revenue above projection project list that was brought before the board for their consideration to bridge the gap. Now, we always like to do these very conservatively if we still are collecting, because I would prefer to do these at the end, because then we know exactly what the dollar value is. But we agreed that we'd come up with a very conservative low number, move forward with some critical projects that the board felt were necessary, and that was approved. So that does mean you will see a RAP2, revenue above projection project list, that will eventually come forward to the board. I think that Jimmy's shooting for some time this spring, and kind of after we have, codified that list with the board and all the departments and really walk the halls on what that's going to look like. But no action can be taken on that until the board approves it. So they kind of put, yep.
Question about the, when you said that you allocate to the cities and they get that surplus or deficit monthly.
Yes.
So the surplus that goes to the cities, that's up to the city government to decide how they handle those surplus funds?
That is correct. So they'll be in the same boat that we are. So whatever their budget and original project list, they'll have to bring any excess collections back before their board to appropriate and use for additional projects. Well, I don't say additional projects, for the tier 1, tier 2 approved project list that they already have. So they are treated they're in the exact same situation that we are. We just want to make sure that because it's a straight percentage of collection, that they receive the benefit and can therefore generate interest earnings on their money versus us holding on to it for them and then saying, okay, we'll give it to you at the end. So it does benefit the cities to get that on a timely basis, but it also helps us to say, if there is a shortfall, that they have to live with the shortfall as well. So it goes both ways. Luckily, in a great economy, everybody loves it. In an economy that is in downturn, it's not as pleasant to have that. But we went to that method after the 94 SPLOST because the MOUs between the county and the cities were a hard dollar amount. It would just say the cities are getting this amount of money. Well, that was all fine and good until you hit that amount of money, and then you had to guess what the next, what the final number was. And you'd be changing those MOUs a dozen times before you got done. And it just became such a nightmare that both the county and the cities agreed that we should do it based on percentage of collections, which is how the dollar value is determined anyway, and just say that way the city shares in the immediate benefit or the downturn with the county. So everybody's on the same playing field.
So are they subject to the same sort of governance protocol as the county is, tier 1, tier 2, and all of that? Or is it up to each city to decide how they're going to handle their SPLOST projects?
Same governance, because it's all SPLOST rules will apply to us evenly. So they can only spend any excess collections on tier 1 approved projects or tier 2 approved projects. So they have to be voter approved projects, period. They don't have any flexibility beyond that. So we'll get into kind of what can happen if you completed all those, because that has been one of the questions that have kind of hung out there. Those are unique in a lot of ways. Cobb County's SPLOST program is not really built that way. I'll tell you what it was designed for and kind of why we're different in just a minute. But I want to share with you these numbers before I get into that, if that's okay. So just to kind of give you an idea of why the SPLOST fund was created. So $1 million in the general fund, Cobb County General Fund, generates approximately $34 million. So to give you an idea of what we need to bring in or millage to equal the 181 million, and looking at over 5 mills in the general fund. So that's one of the reasons we went with the SPLOST program, is because the 5 mills would be to Cobb County taxpayers only, whereas SPLOST is split between Cobb County taxpayers as well as visitors. So you do have a little bit of that give and take there, where we're getting the same benefit. In this case, we're actually getting better than budgeted, and we're having that shared cost. And just to kind of put what would a 5 mil increase roughly look like on a $300,000 home, that's about a $550 increase per year in our general fund. So that just kind of gives you a perspective of what that would equate to. So, Jack, can you please keep me honest? I want to make sure I come back and hit your question, if that's okay. Okay, so please keep me honest here. But I did want to share with you the allocations, because our SPLOST programs have evolved over the years. Prior to the 2016 SPLOST, they were primarily DOT. There was a few sprinklings of a few major projects in other departments, but 2016, we really saw a shift, and that went to more capital repair and improvement with some capital infrastructure, with some infrastructure additions. Now, the 2022 SPLOST looks pretty similar as far as the allocation goes, but I just wanted to share with you, when we look at that, just kind of keep that in mind, that these are going to be a little bit different projects. So if you've seen the booklet, I definitely would encourage, if you haven't seen the booklet, I would encourage you to look at it so you get a good feel of what the projects are going to be. But the allocations are pretty much the same. But keep in mind, like if you go back to the 94, 1990 SPLOST, they're primarily DOT. So we've gotten away from that since 2016, and it has kind of come back a little bit as we go to DOT in 2022. But please keep in mind that $329 million number that you see for DOT, that is pre any federal and state grants. So that number will go up dramatically. So I want to give you the current budget as it is today, well, at the end of October for the 2016, but that includes all federal and state grants that have been put into these programs in addition to the SPLOST, whereas the 2022 is simply SPLOST. So it would be nothing to add $100 million or so, or $50 million to $100 million in DOT for state and federal grants that will be coming in throughout that life of that program.
Bill, this is Steve Byrne. Quick question on the chart that you've got up right now.
Yes, sir.
That allocation, is that tier 1 and tier 2 projects combined, or just tier 1 projects?
This is just tier 1 projects. Yes, sir. That's a good question. So these are, when we usually don't talk tier 2 very often until a SPLOST is complete, and we feel like we've handled that. And what you saw with RAP 1, the first revenue above projection allocation, that was primarily additional monies for tier 1 projects. The last one that I can recall for 2012, I think we did very few dollars to tier 2. A lot of times what happens at the end of the SPLOST programs, they look at the kind of the bucket items, if you will, like resurfacing, intersection improvements, sidewalks, things like that, as they have those conversations. Now, I think the tier 1 allocation that we saw in RAP 1 for the 2016 was a little bit different, because they were very specific projects and didn't go to large bucket items to say, well, we need to continue this program. It was, what do we still need to do to really kind of complete this project? It is substantially done, but a lot of times you have additional things that you see once you get in there that would fall under the scope because of the limited budget that you had really at this point in 2014. You know, is the number really still realistic? And rather than scaling back on the project, you want to complete it to the full extent, so you have increased costs. And that is one of your challenges. I mean, we still have projects outstanding from the 05, which we'll get to in a minute. But I mean, can you imagine what the costs are today for those projects compared to in 2003 when they were considered? I mean, that's a significant increase. So that's one of the challenges they face, is always try to make sure they have enough in there to accommodate that. But there's always surprises as we go through those. But primarily for the 2012 SPLOST, when they went and allocated the additional dollars, it went to those large ticket bucket items like resurfacing, sidewalks, and so on. And they spread them out between the districts to try to make it even. But that's a great question on the tier 1, tier 2. Okay, so this is sorry, go ahead.
This is Jay Cunningham. Can I get a couple quick questions?
Absolutely, Jay, go ahead.
I remember years ago, we traveled with an idea in the business community that about 30% of the money, the SPLOST money, was coming from outside the county. Is that still is that still a number? Was it right then? And is that the number approximately?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the debate for years. It really depends on the organization you talk to. And I honestly think it depends on the county and what you have to draw out in outside entities, outside visitors. So, one of the things that we work with is Cobb Travel and Tourism, is to try to see, I mean, this may be unpopular, but this is just my opinion. So I'll share it with you. I mean, counties that have attractions that bring in outside visitors, I'm going to use, I can use a variety of things. I mean, we have Performing Arts Center, we have the Galleria, we have Truist Park, we have the Battery, we have Six Flags, we have Whitewater. We have a lot of venues that bring in outside visitors. So I would say that if you're looking at a number that, 30 to 70% window is probably a realistic number. I've heard as high as 35 and as low as 20. So the problem is that it's really hard to quantify because the businesses don't track it that way. But when we look at outside visitors and drawing people into these venues, we feel like we're on the higher side of that range. But like I said, the range is typically between 20 and 35. I've even heard as high as 40, but it just depends. I mean, the ones that I've heard on the higher side are, the counties that would have, large amusement parks, which, we have. We have professional sports teams, which draw in that. So you have some of that. It's a heavily debated number, but all we can say for sure is it's not 100% county taxpayer dollars.
Okay, quick other question. The idea about the matching.
Jay, I lost you there.
Is there any imminent threat that goes away that you see on the horizon, that piece disappears beyond our control?
So Jay, I think you cut out a little bit. Can you ask it one more time?
The $463 million, that's the matching state and federal funds, say that's $15 million a year over time. Is there any imminent threat to that money not existing anymore that you're aware of, or we just take it for granted, or what? Do you see anything there that would change that?
As of right now, no. With the infrastructure stuff that's going on in DC, I mean, there's always the potential for that to go up. So the way we look at this is over a long period of time to say, what did we really experience during those times? So during the recovery of the Great Recession, we saw some additional grant dollars that became available. But a lot of those were to restore jobs. But, that's one of the positive things about hiring contractors. And SPLOST program gets a lot of credit for a lot of things. But one of the things that I think it doesn't get credit for is we're keeping people employed. I mean, by hiring contractors to perform this work. And then, right now it's the reverse. It's hard to get contractors. Everybody's busy. Labor shortages and supply shortages are challenges. So I would say, it will ebb and flow for sure. Am I concerned that would it go away in entirety? No, I don't think that's realistic. There's always going to be state and federal grants out there, especially DOT related to improve infrastructure, help with commuting, safety programs, you name it. There's always going to be some funding opportunities out there. Now, maybe the source will change year to year. Absolutely. The dollar amounts will fluctuate, sure. But, it's all about the great work that our DOT folks and, anybody else who wants to apply for a grant, researching and submitting that application to get the most out of the SPLOST dollars that we can.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay. So I'm going to jump into the excess and shortfall a little bit. We've already kind of talked about, how the cities get their piece and how we live through that. But just want to reiterate that the excess collections can be brought back before the board for a vote, and they will be allocated to Tier 1 or Tier 2 projects. These allocations can be used to cover increased costs and continue programs like sidewalks resurfacing, intersection improvements, or any other voter-approved projects. Collections are monitored monthly, but if collections are trending to come in less than originally budgeted, projects will be scaled back to meet the actual revenue or seek supplemental funding. This is something we saw in the 05 SPLOST. Luckily for 2012, 2016, and hopefully 22, we'll see that going the other way and have some additional dollars to allocate. Scaling back on projects requires budgetary reduction as well. So those also have to come back before the board. So it's not just, yeah, we're going to come in a little short. We need to come back, pare back $5 million, deciding what projects are pared back, because you cannot eliminate projects unless they're deemed no longer feasible. You can scale back on them. So obviously the easiest ones would be the things like intersection improvements and resurfacing and things of that nature if they're not already spent. So that's one of the challenges that we face. So that's why it's important that we monitor this on a monthly basis and don't wait until the end, because we could be all out of resurfacing money, and then the next thing you know, the project that we have left is something that was absolutely critical that we can't really pare back on. So then you're looking at supplemental funding, which is always a challenge on the back end. So this is critical that it monitors every month. So when you get that monthly SPLOST update and they tell you how the collections are coming, that's all part of it. Yes, you're going to hear a number, and it's great if we're up, but there's a lot more pieces that are going on behind the scenes, because if it's up, that's great. But if we're close to break even or teetering around or looking at where the economy's headed, that may not be enough, because again, remember in the 05, we were up over $20 million and then came in short. So that's something that we had to kind of slowly land that plane to say, all right, which projects are we going to pare back on to make this work? Okay. Jacqueline, can you please ask your question one more time? Because I know this is Drew's slide. I'm going to give him an extra second to get on. And if not, I'm going to attempt to address his slide. So if you can ask your question once more, and I want to make sure I touch on it.
I've forgotten what question you're referring to.
Okay. Me too. So that's why I was hoping one of us would remember. All right. So
I did have one question though. In past meetings, we've gotten it's a line item printout of all the SPLOST, and it summarizes at the bottom of each SPLOST the surplus. And so the 2005 is in there, and it looks like the surplus fund is just sitting in there. And so I understand the reasoning you're laying out for surplus funds, but really, do we have a huge surplus from 2005 sitting there?
No, so that's really what this slide is. And when you say surplus, this is basically unspent budget dollars, because 05 actually came in a little bit under the original projection, but they haven't spent all the dollars yet. So this slide that I got up here really addresses kind of what's outstanding for 05. And basically, well, I'm going to just jump right in it because you asked this question. It's a great time to ask the question anyway. So I'm going to try to summarize this for Drew a little bit. He put this together for me because DOT is really the outstanding issue for 05. And it comes down to drainage. So that very first bullet point is the key for this. On September 14th, 2021, the board approved $4.8 million of SPLOST funded projects for 05. Now, we have some big ticket items that are going on here, and the outstanding items are listed as individual projects below. So you basically see 1, 2, 3, 4 projects that are outstanding, and those are scheduled to wrap up this spring. And Drew has this on the list to bring this kind of to a close in this summer of 2022. So the challenge that we face with a lot of these projects that we either acquire land or, to complete a project is we have condemnation hearings that just drag on forever. I really wish we could just buy capital, but that's, obviously that's not how this works. A lot of ours are infrastructure that need land acquisitions and things of that nature. So the condemnation hearings really drag these out, and drainage is one piece of that. A lot of times we need to have some land requirements for drainage projects. But here are the list of the drainage projects that are outstanding. And obviously they require some supplemental funding. I mean, that's the thing is that, we get to these projects and we're sending money from the general fund to SPLOST to help finish these because there's not enough funds to do so. So that's why I want to put that on the list is that, even though this is 05, please know that on September 14th, 2021, these were really just got the approval to complete these because they needed additional funding to do so. So that's one of the key areas with this. And, when we talk about, how in the world do you still have projects open from 05? This agenda date is one of the big reasons is that, just because SPLOST collections ended, and let's say, 2011, we didn't begin these in 05. We didn't even begin these in 11. We were waiting and completing these at the end because they needed additional funding or there's additional things that have popped up in these projects that require that funding. So, for example, like that's one of the things that still shocks me is like, why do we got 05 SPLOST projects open? Well, when I look at this agenda, I'm like, okay, well that's just just a few months ago, really, is when this additional funding was approved. So these will be wrapping up. I know drainage was a huge issue for the county this year. We saw a big flooding event, and this is kind of the result. So having those kind of catch-all buckets of major projects and things that we can push forward is absolutely critical. So I hope that answers your question on 05. So basically what's going to happen when these get done, let's say there's, I don't know, $50,000 left in the 05. That will roll into the newest SPLOST as its own line. So let's say 2022 will have an 05 SPLOST, and let's say there's $50,000 left. It'll be $50,000 for drainage, infrastructure, whatever improvements that still have to be tracked, because we cannot spend $05 on something other than what was approved for the 05 SPLOST. So please keep that in mind. That's just one of the things as they close it out. Ideally, they spend it down to the penny, but if they don't, that would be one of the things that we'll carry forward and say, okay, you got $50,000 left, and you need, I don't know, let's say there's something else that needs to be done to the Superior Court building or whatever was in the 05 SPLOST that they could use that at a later date. That would be kind of close that out, kind of keep that as a contingency until that was fully spent down to zero. Okay, so I hope that answers your 05 stuff, because that, if you're anything like me, it bugs me to death that those are still open. But at least after talking with Drew, I understand why, and I understand why that kind of helps to have the time frame of when they'll close out. All right, so one of the last things I wanted to touch on with you, and then I'm going to open it up to any other questions that you have, is if you haven't been to the Cobb County SPLOST website, please do so, because I think you already mentioned that monthly report that you get. It's also available on the county on this website. You'll just click on the monthly reports. You get that full line item detail of every SPLOST project we have open, the budgets, the actuals, the encumbrances, you name it. It's all there for you. But it also has some really good information for you on the existing SPLOST, as well as, I think if you go through these, it gives you you can get to the booklets on both the 16 and 22 SPLOST. And if anybody has any issues, please let us know. Ross does a great job with kind of keeping this up for us. But this has got some really good information on here, and you can kind of follow the links. But if you haven't been there, or you have any trouble getting any of the booklets, please let us know, because we'll definitely provide those to you, preferably electronically, because they're quite large. But outside of that, that's a quick overview I wanted to give you all. But at this time, I do want to open it up for any questions that you have, anything that I haven't answered, anything you need from my team at the meetings. I love to say, hey, here's the numbers, and that's great. But if you have additional questions, please let us know. We're happy to answer them. And if you know ahead of time, feel free to email me. We can make sure that we want to make sure you all get the same information. Anybody?
Hi, Bill. This is Tanya Robinson from District 4. I just had a question, kind of going back to the earlier slides with the flow chart of monies. I understand money flows from state to county and counties to cities. Then yes, from cities to contractors, is that money that's flowing to those contractors, I'm assuming, for these projects? Yes. And from the contractors to individuals and businesses, is that money that comes to individuals, is that taxpayers, or is that the benefits of the projects that are completed from the SPLOST?
That is the benefits of the projects completed from the SPLOST. So for example, if we're paying contractors, we're keeping people employed, then they're going out and spending their paychecks to, put it back into the SPLOST program. So the nice thing is the money we get from SPLOST, we're reinvesting and basically getting some of it back again, because we're getting charged sales tax from the contractors. Contractors are paying their employees. The employees are then going out and buying goods and services and paying sales tax. So it does flow very nicely. This is a really big driver of the economy. I mean, think about all the contractors and people we keep employed just from our SPLOST projects. So, and not to mention, I know there's other demands in the county for development and infrastructure. So this is a great tool at our disposal, as well as, don't forget, the Board of Education has a component of this as well.
All right, great, thank you. So it's kind of tangible and intangible benefits with this flow chart. Just want to kind of get a feel for what that whole circle meant.
Great question.
Bill, I had one more question on the SPLOST slide that you had. It showed the 2005 ongoing projects.
Yes, sir.
There was a line item there that reminded me of a similar question. It said that I-85 and 285 drainage, that there was surplus property to be sold.
Right. Okay.
When was that property acquired with SPLOST money, and do the proceeds of that and say vehicle sales from I guess police cars that were bought with SPLOST funds, does that come back into the SPLOST fund?
It does, yes. So that's part of our requirement as we move forward. Now, that I say it does typically, the board does have the ability to make a decision on that, but historically in the past, any property that we've sold from SPLOST, whether it's a property or vehicles, and Drew, I see Drew's on, so he can keep me honest if he can think of an example. But one of the things that we do whenever we sell property is we always look to see where that property was acquired, meaning what source of funds were used, because a lot of times it could be SPLOST, it could be a federal grant. So if it was acquired through either of those means, we put them back to where they originated from. Now, when that being said, is like, let's say you bought something or we sold something that was acquired in the 94 SPLOST. Obviously that SPLOST is no longer active. So we can put it back to the newest SPLOST that we have, and it can still be used for SPLOST. Now, that's kind of the only difference for us, is that if that SPLOST is still active, we try to put it back to where it was originated from. If that SPLOST is closed, we'll go ahead and put it in the newest SPLOST, and it will continue to be used to support voter-approved projects. Drew, would you agree with that? Yeah.
Yes, that's an accurate representation of our process.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi there. Quick question. This is Matt Yarbrough. There's a few of us that are newer to the board, and so we haven't seen some of the city presentations. I was able to find the minutes through the website of past questions that were asked to the city representatives, but not necessarily anything they presented. Is that possible to be made accessible?
So I'm going to lean on Drew and April and see if we can collect. I'm sure April has copies of the presentations. I'm hoping that we could provide those if there's any one specifically that you'd like to see. And if not, I'm sure that we could reach out to our city partners and get that for you.
Yeah, I guess it looks like based on the agenda that most recently you had Ackworth and Kennesaw, so they're probably further down the year in terms of representing. So maybe just the most recent ones, given we won't hear from them for a while.
Okay, we'll put that request in to make sure that the full board gets a copy of that presentation.
This is Marlene. I was wondering if we would get a hard copy of the 22 like we have in the past. It's always good to have a hard copy in case people think that you are playing with the numbers.
Yeah, so your request is a hard copy of the booklet that was approved. Okay, I will see what we can pull together and work through Jimmy's office and see if we can have it at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Well, anybody got anything else?
Hey, good afternoon. This is Lindsay Edwards. Quick question regarding our tracking of the contractors. Do we do that at any level where, in the circle we talked about the flow of the capital? Are we tracking who and how many different firms are receiving these contracts?
I know it is tracked through our financial system. I can tell you that's not a report I typically look at. I can work with our purchasing director and see if that's something that they review and the frequency in which they review that. I know that obviously with all our SPLOST projects, for the most part, due to the dollar value, they're all required to go up to bid for the most part. So they do all flow through purchasing, but it is a competitive bid process. So we can, I'm sure we could pull a report to say, these are approximately the number of contractors we've used for any given SPLOST. and maybe this contractor we use more just based on the volume. This is the contractor we use more frequently than not, and it would just simply be based on their competitive bids. Would
that would be helpful?
Okay, I will talk to our purchasing director and see what kind of report we can run on that.
And if I could add to that, Bill.
Yeah.
So everything that is kind of a low bid job runs through purchasing, where they actually collect those bids and evaluate those, just to make sure that there's some separation between the department that puts the project out and then the department that reviews those bids. The only, I guess, somewhat exception to that is we have something that are called master task order contracts. So we put those out to have consultants bid on those services. So since consultants are more qualification based rather than strictly low bid, then we enter into contracts with a number of different potential task order consultants, at which point we make sure that each of the consultants is given an opportunity to perform work under that 2-year-long contract. To make sure that we have kind of a balance of the low bid projects that are, the construction primarily, as well as more of the qualification based, where we're hiring engineers or, in some cases, architects, and we're spreading those around amongst those that are deemed to be qualified for that work.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Jim, any questions? Anything that we missed? You're on mute.
I'm ahead of you. I do apologize for being a few minutes late. County manager was chewing on me a little bit, but that's okay. Bill, you did a good job. Drew, thanks for joining in and clarifying a few things. We'll work on the hard copy of the books. Bill will work on the report of contractors. There is a third way that sometimes SPLOST dollars are spent, and that's through our unit price contractors. We periodically go out and bid out certain things, for instance, fencing, lighting, different things that you can get unit price contracts on. And that way, whenever a project comes up, you've got 700 linear feet of fence. You go back to those unit price contractors, look in there, how much they charge for a post, how much they charge for fabric, how much they charge for bolts, and you can put together your prices to do it that way. So there's a couple different ways that we can do that. All of them have their own useful applications whenever doing this many projects of this magnitude. So, but no, Bill, thank you for putting this all together. I think it was very informative, not just for the new folks, but it's a nice refresher for those who have been around for a while.
Sure. Happy to. And I just want to remind everybody, please, if you should have my email. And if you don't, I'm actually going to attend the next virtual oversight committee meeting. Please make sure, if you don't have it, talk to me. I'll get it to you, because if you have any additional questions, we're all here as a resource available to you. And we'll see how these virtual meetings go.
Is it possible to get hard copy emailed to us, or not hard copy, but digital copy emailed to us of your presentation?
Yes, absolutely. I will make sure we get that out to you guys. And then I'm going to work with communications to also post it on the SPLOST website as well. All right. Anybody? Any other comments? Or looks like we're good. Everybody excited for the game tonight? I see. There you go. Okay. Well, y'all have a great day. Thank you very much for your time. And please don't hesitate to reach out. And looking forward to seeing you at the end of the month, the next oversight meeting.